Those short letters, like those action notices that you get through email, turn out to be extremely important. Just responding to those and taking like literally the minute it takes to submit a letter over email to a representative or a town board, that's really important. And it's so low effort, but it makes a difference.
Do you have a minute to spare? 5 minutes? An hour? Well, I hope you have at least 15 to listen to this episode, but today we're going to speak about the importance of supporting clean energy projects and how you can make a difference in as little as 1 minute. I'm Barry Weigel. This is Plugging In. Welcome to Plugging In, powering our way to a brighter and healthier New York. I'm your host, Barry Weigel. Each episode on this podcast, we will discuss a different topic related to clean energy, explaining complex topics in a way you can understand. Become part of the community as we help to make a brighter and healthier New York.
As the sun crests on the horizon, a new day dawns in our state. A new hope for tomorrow is rising, a clean future we create. Tomorrow we breathe easier, tomorrow the skies are clear. Today we are plugging in, the future of New York is here.
We've heard it on earlier episodes of this podcast that there are hundreds of ways to get involved and support renewable energy, from things that take very little time, energy, or money, scaling all the way up to starting your own grassroots group. And don't worry, we're not expecting all of you to do that. No matter how much time you have to devote, we have ideas for you. That's where Luka comes in. Len is the Renewable Outreach Coordinator for New Yorkers for Clean Power. Len, thank you for joining the podcast.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.
So we're going to start off small. It's a hypothetical scenario. You find out that there is a solar project being proposed in your town. You want to support it, but you don't have time to attend a meeting or join a grassroots group. What are some of the things you can do to support?
Just talk about it any chance you can. If I find myself excited about something, I love to share that great news with people. Renewable energy projects can bring amazing benefits to your community. So by sharing information about specific ways the project can help your community, everyone wins. So for example, if you know the project will bring a reduction in taxes and support the school and support the fire department, or even provide a 15% reduction in everyone's electric bills, then letting people know that information is just really important.
Yeah, just starting that conversation among your friends, family, neighbors, you're right. And people feel like they're not alone in supporting it. Maybe there are people that are kind of scared to talk about it. And if you talk about it, they'll talk about it. So that's definitely great advice.
Exactly.
So we'll get a little more engaged now. What are some other ways that you can support the project?
Oh, there are so many choices. So just think about what you're good at and what you feel comfortable doing. So, for example, if you'd like to invite some friends over and just talk about the types of information that are circulating in the community. So some of that might be accurate and some of it might come from different sources and maybe not be so accurate. So talking through those details together and just asking yourselves questions can make some of those facts and the misinformation, the clarity between those two things can just become really obvious. For example, if you get a mailing and you're just like, this seems a bit odd, well, just invite your friends over and talk about it. By going step by step about what exactly is in that information packet or on that card or anything, you can start figuring out that maybe some of that messaging is trying to play with your emotions and maybe shut off some of your critical thinking and is maybe trying to manipulate you. So those are indications of sort of misinformation. And just knowing that can sort of set you free and help you figure out new ways to be able to approach topics and discussions in your conversations with others so that they aren't being manipulated by those false sources. Does that all make sense?
It does make sense. And I feel like, we see this in our work every day, that it's a lot easier to be against the project and be vocally against it than it is to be vocally for a project like this. It's a lot easier to make the Facebook group against the project. Opponents usually do that before supporters have a chance to make their Facebook group, if there is one. So I think it is important to kind of think about where that information is coming from and what and why people are trying to say it to you. So that is good advice.
I was just thinking of lots of other things that a person could do if they felt like it, but maybe it's something that is new to you. Types of public engagement, maybe just don't have a lot of experience with that, but that it's just a half step outside your comfort zone. For example, maybe you'd like to write an op-ed for your local paper and you just need someone like to read it through and give you a second glance before you actually submit it. New Yorkers for Clean Power and me, I can help you with that. There are a lot of people here at New Yorkers for Clean Power that have experience writing letters to the editor, and we can have some good suggestions about how you can have an impact while just keeping it brief. My own area is actually in statistics and data analysis, so I'm very careful about the facts that I cite and the quality of information that I'm providing and where people can access the sources of that information so they know they're reporting something accurate. So if you want detailed information that you want to include in a letter to the editor, I can help you look up things that are relevant to your interests and what you think would be important for your community. Our group provides that kind of support. Just contact us.
There's different sizes of renewable energy projects, everything from residential to larger utility scale or grid scale solar and wind projects. And they all go through different permitting processes. The largest projects, which usually get the most public attention just because of their size, go through the State Office of Renewable Energy Siting. And there's a totally separate way that the permitting happens and ways that public comments happen. Can you give us a little insight into that process?
Any project that can produce 25 megawatts of energy or more goes through a special process that requires meeting special safety procedures. New York state law requires full transparency about that process, from environmental review to exactly how the project will eventually be decommissioned. So all of that information has to be made public. So every proposed project is accessible on the website for the Office of Renewable Energy Siting. That's often called ORES, O-R-E-S. That same website, ORES, it has a tab where it archives all of the comments submitted by individuals who are interested in the project. And so you can submit a comment yourself if you'd like. It can be as short or as detailed or as long and fully cited for factual information, whatever you're comfortable with.
And I'll just reiterate that. It can be just something, one sentence, I live in this town and I support this project.
Absolutely. And you can see the comments for other people who've submitted those comments, and you can see the range of comments that are submitted. And some of them are quite short, and some of them are a little more engaged.
And I'll also say that all the steps that you talked about before also apply to the larger project. There's always town oversight into these projects as well. There's zoning changes, road changes, all sorts of things that the town also is involved, and ORES works very closely with the local municipalities on these projects. Let's say you live in this town, you've submitted your comment, you see that your town board is going to be discussing a project. How do you get involved?
That is a great question, and probably one of the most important for our supporters. Most of the people, like you mentioned before, if people get their emotions involved, there's more people who come to speak out against because they're more motivated. If you feel some anger or unhappiness or resentment about something, or maybe we're misinformed about something, you're going to be riled up and you're going to go in there and say a thing or two. But people who are just happy about it and calm and really excited about the project, they aren't necessarily motivated to go make a comment at a public meeting. But it turns out to be extremely important that people who support the meeting just stand up and say so. So the public comment period during a meeting, you're usually asked to introduce yourself and your name and where you live and things like that. And then you have like 3 minutes to say anything that you want. And you can just say, I support this project. And that's all. So it's not a massive time commitment. It's just very simple for the process. But it's really important that more supporters get involved in that process, because otherwise it's not really a democratic process. You're getting a sort of skewed inventory of what public opinion actually is for that area. So that's the area that we'd really like to make the most change. It's just getting supporters to public meetings just to say, hi, I'm here, I care, and this is important.
And we've heard from developers just how big of a difference that makes, and from town officials and elected officials, how big of a difference it makes when supporters do show up. You might have a town official who supports a project on principle or because they recognize the benefits, but if 100% of the people at the town meeting are against the project, they don't have the political cover they need to support the project, even if they know that it would be good for the town. Yeah, it's it's very, very important what you're saying, that if you can, go to these meetings and try to support the project. A lot of these things we've talked about are kind of on your own. You've mentioned some ways that you could reach out to New Yorkers for Clean Power for help with op-eds or other things. How do people find other supporters for projects?
Well, if you start showing up at the public meetings, that would be the best place to get in touch after the meeting. Just go up and say, hey, thank you for coming here. Thank you for saying what you said. I feel the same way. Do you want to have coffee? There are also some wonderful organizations. For example, I belong to multiple volunteer organizations: the League of Conservation Voters, the Citizens Campaign for Environment, the Sierra Club, there's Vote Solar, there's Climate Reality, there's Mothers Out Front.
Those organizations you mentioned, which we will link in the show notes, are all amazing organizations. And I think it's important to remember that by joining or getting involved with these organizations, it's kind of the same thing we were talking about with support. You could just be on their mailing list and fill out a petition when they ask. You don't have to be going to meetings or donating money even though that would be amazing. There are very minimal ways to get involved, very little effort you can put in that really do make a big difference.
I am so glad you mentioned that, because those short letters, like those action notices that you get through email, turn out to be extremely important. There's also a certain app you can use that makes it quite easy for you to send a letter to your representative on topics of concern for you. So just responding to those and taking like literally the minute it takes to submit a letter over email to a representative or a town board, that's really important. And it's so low effort. But it makes a difference.
We've been talking about a hypothetical project in our hypothetical town that we live in, but how do you actually do research and see if there's a project being proposed in your area?
That's a really good question. So for the ORA's website, one of my favorite websites with all that information on every area, if a project is going to be asking for oversight or creating a proposal, it'll be listed on there. And ORAS has this great website with a map. And you can just look at the map and see what's closest to you.
Those, like you said, are the biggest projects, the 25 megawatt or greater projects. And I think for a lot of the community scale, you just kind of have to keep an ear out, keep an eye on those town agendas to see when those things are being discussed.
Right. Just keep an eye on the local media, read your local paper, attend webinars, attend support groups, things like that. The online community is so valuable now, but nothing really replaces your local paper. I think in many ways, just keeping in touch with the news through your local paper or just subscribing to notices from your town board about when the meetings are going to be. Those are really, really valuable and irreplaceable. Things like, the Neighborhood Watch Group or Facebook might not have the same timeliness for the important announcements and the same objectivity. So keeping in touch with your local media outlet, like your local radio station, your local newspaper, is really important.
Yes, great advice. Final question. We've covered it, but it's important to reiterate. How big of a difference can even just that 1 minute filling out that survey, filling out that action notice, filling out that petition, how big of a difference for a project can that actually make?
Huge, huge. Oh, it's really impossible to understate how important these small actions are, especially things like showing up at a town meeting to show support. Because, for example, communities might really love having a project there and know that it's going to be good for a community, and they don't realize how important it is to show up. And so only the misrepresentative minority of negative forces get heard, and then the project is blocked or can't continue. And all those amazing economic and social benefits that could have flowed into that community get diverted to somewhere else. And it can be a tremendous loss for a community. So speaking up, even on the smallest scale, is super, super important.
Excellent. Len Luka, you are the Renewables Outreach Coordinator for New Yorkers for Clean Power. We're going to link your contact information in the show notes as well, because you are a great resource for supporters of clean energy across New York. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Very kind of you. Thank you so much. Good luck with your work.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Plugging In. I hope you learned something, and I hope you share this knowledge with someone else. It would be incredibly helpful if you leave us a 5-star review wherever you found this podcast. If there's a topic you would like us to cover in the future or have a question about clean energy, send us an email at podcast@aceny.org. You can follow us on social media using the links in the show notes, or consider joining our Clean Energy Supporters mailing list at aceny.org/support. Your support is crucial to creating a brighter and healthier New York. I'll see you next time.
As the sun crests on the horizon, a new day dawns in our state. A new hope for tomorrow is rising, a clean future we create. Tomorrow we breathe easier, tomorrow the skies are clear. Today we are plugging in the future